Hi guys, today I'm thinking about how UK workplace pension, UK state pension or ISA income is taxed in Malta. The table shows the tax rates that are applied to income from a UK workplace pension, a UK state pension or UK ISA income from dividends in Malta. So UK expats would generally be relocating to Malta under the Malta Retirement Programme or MRP post-Brexit, which is for both EU and non-EU retirees, unless they happen to have an EU passport. Then they may be using the ordinary residence basis for their taxation. The ordinary residence programme is for EU citizens. The calculations assume that the income is remitted to Malta, which means transferred to a Maltese bank account to be spent in the country. The UK and Malta have a double tax treaty, which means there should be no tax required by the UK government, as long as HMRC are informed correctly of your new residence in Malta. So for income from a UK workplace pension in pounds, on an amount of 12,570 per year, for an EU citizen living in Malta on an ordinary residence remittance basis, the tax required would be zero, as it's below the threshold of €37,104. So a tax rate of zero. So on 15120, zero again, 30240 in pounds per year, zero again. And as we get above the threshold, on an amount of 60480, the tax required would be 13907, which is a tax rate of 22.9%. And as we get up to a level of income of just short of £1,000,000, 967680, tax required is 319600, which is a tax rate of 33%. And as we get to the huge level of income of £7.7 million, the tax required is 2.7 million, which is an effective tax rate of 34.8%. So for an expat living in Malta on the Malta Retirement Programme, generally a 15% tax rate is applied, but there's a minimum payment of €7,500, which equates to £6,529. So on an income of 12,570, the tax required is 6,529, which is an effective tax rate of 51.9%. And on 15120, 6,529 tax again, which is 43.1%. And on 30240, 6,529 again, which is a tax rate of 21.5%. So as we go down the table, and the amounts are doubled, on an amount of income of £1.9 million, the tax required would be 290,300, which is an effective tax rate of 15%. And even when we get up to the huge level of income of 7.7 million, we're still paying the flat rate of 15%, which is £1.19 million of tax. So for a UK state pension, on an amount of £12,547.60, for someone living in Malta on the ordinary residence visa, the tax required is zero. And it's the same for someone living in Malta on the Malta Retirement Programme. The tax required is zero. So for ISA income, for income that's received from the ISA in dividends, on an income of £12,570, for someone that's living in Malta on the ordinary residence visa, the tax required is 813, which is a tax rate of 6.4%. And then on an amount of 30240, the tax rate is 21.3% and the tax required is 6464. And as we get to a level of income of 967,680, the tax rate is 33%. And when we get to the huge level of income of £7.7 million, the tax required is 2.7 million at a tax rate of 34.8%. And for somebody living in Malta on the Malta retirement programme, a 15% tax rate would generally be applied. But there's a minimum payment again of €7,500. So on the amount of 12,570, the tax is 6,529, which is an effective tax rate of 51.9%. And then on an amount of 15120, 6,529 again, 43.1%, 30240, 6,529 again, a tax rate of 21.5, and when we get above the threshold, we then pay the tax rate of 15%. So even when we get to the huge level of income of £7.7 million, we are still paying the 15% tax rate. So when the workplace pension tax is compared to the ISA tax, the amount of tax required after the threshold is exactly the same. So there is no difference in treatment for people on the MRP visa between the workplace pension income and the ISA income. So the outcome is that for workplace pension income, there is certainly the benefit of having no tax on the income of less than €37,104, which is £32,300. But this is only for those who are EU citizens. For those attempting to relocate to Malta with a state pension, it appears there would be no tax on the income. However, the cost of living for a single person in Malta is £1,275 per month. So with the state pension being £1,045 per month, for the tax year 26-27, it would be extremely difficult for a single person to survive in Malta on a state pension alone. And for the ISA income for an EU citizen, who could happen to be a British citizen with an EU passport, it is taxed at progressive rates, which are relatively high when compared to other countries. And for those who are on Malta retirement programme, the rates of tax on the ISA income are high for an income of less than €37,104, which is £32,300, and then a flat rate of 15%, which is the same as the tax rate on the workplace pension for those on the MRP visa. So there is no difference in treatment for the workplace pension income or the ISA income. All things considered, it is hard to see a benefit in terms of taxation for either the workplace pension income or the ISA income for someone on the MRP visa, which is the visa most British expats would be on, for relocating to Malta, particularly as there is another island in the Med next door which is much more favourable in terms of taxation, namely Cyprus. And also, if the ISA income is retained in the UK, it is not subject to any tax at all. Okay guys, that was how pension income and ISA income is taxed in Malta. I'll see you on the next one.